Okay, we're ready to get started.
All right. I'm going to wait for 1 more minute and just make sure that everybody is on, and then we're going to get going. You're here for the Commit to Calm event. You're in the right spot. Got a lot of people that have signed up to attend this course this evening, well over 250 about. So we know we've hit the topic pretty well. So I'd like to welcome you for joining Oakdale OBGYN for our first Commit to Calm event. As you might know, this is a 3-part series, and we're really happy that you're taking the time out of your day to learn what you can do to help promote self-care in what has been a pretty challenging time. My name is Kristen Smith, and I'm the outreach coordinator for Oakdale OBGYN. I'm going to be helping to moderate tonight's webinar along with our technical consultant, Andy Meyer. I want to address a little bit of housekeeping, talk about the handouts, how we're going to handle questions, etc. And then I'll turn it over to Patty. So a bit of housekeeping. The handouts are on our website on the Commit to Calm page. Some of you may have been able to download the presentation. It'll be there along with a copy of the presentation so that you can share it with others if you so choose. I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions, and we're going to ask you to hold those until the end of the presentation, and you can type those into the chat or into the Q&A. As Zoom is set up, Patty is not able to view the questions that come in on chat, so Andy and I will be helping to moderate that. This seminar, as well as the other 3, will be available on the website. We'll also be putting them on our social and on our YouTube channel, which is Oakdale OBGYN Maple Grove. So you'll be able to access that or share it or do whatever you want to do with it, pending the content. And then I think that as a precursor, this is the first of 3, as I mentioned. We're dealing with the body and how you can manage stress with your body and greeting stress a little bit differently. Next week, we have acupressure, and that's going to be offering some very practical tips that you can use. And then finally, we'll have dietitian Kim Plessel addressing nutrition and the types of foods that you can use to promote a healthy gut, promote sleep, etc. So with that, I'd like to introduce Patty Hlava, who is a psychologist that, if you've been attending these seminars over the course of the last 3 years, I've really come to enjoy our partnership very much. She brings a lot to the table. She is a transformational coach, and in that vein, does many different things in the community. She is a lecturer and an instructor. She leads workshops and seminars in the Twin Cities. She is a mentor and a teacher for Insight Timer, and really her skills are just amazing. So I'm hoping that you'll appreciate the content that she delivers tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Kristen. Thank you. It is great to be here, and I love being able to come back here time and time again just to share with this community. And today we're going to be talking about cultivating calm and what calm is and how we can bring the body back into this practice. Like, what does the body look like in terms of cultivating self-care, and what does it have to do with it? And there's actually quite a lot. So we're going to talk today about calm, what it is, how we navigate it, why it's showing up as a concern more now than maybe it has in the past. We'll talk about the language of the body, and throughout our session, we're going to have time to practice. So we're going to practice and reflect a little bit and have plenty of time for a Q&A. So before we begin, I'm going to invite you all to pause for just a second. And you can either type into the chat just so you can see that you're not alone here, or you can just make a note for yourself. Like, what is one thing that you really want to walk away from this session with today? Like, what is it that brought you here? Because at the end, if that question isn't answered, I really want to invite you to ask it. So take a moment and get really clear on what it is that brought you here today and what you'd like to walk away from this session with. All right. So while you're doing that, let's talk about what calm is. So we talk about calma, like we want to be calm, we want to be peaceful. We talk about inner peace and all these beautiful things. But let's talk about what calm is. So calm is essentially, it's a state of being. It's more than just a presence. It's this idea of experiencing your whole body, your whole environment without disturbance. So we can experience whatever's going on out in the world and still feel pretty steady internally. Our breath is even, our mind is steady. There's a sense of stillness inside of us when we're calm. And it comes from a sense of feeling safe. When the body feels safe. When we feel like, yeah, you know what, even though that chaos is out there, I'm okay here. Right now, all is okay. And it's rooted in a sense of trust. So when we think about calm, there's a sense of trusting that no matter what's going on around us, internally, we're all right. We're going to get through it. We trust in our resilience. So this is all happening on not necessarily our conscious thought, but there's a sense that we're okay. So what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is stress. Is anyone familiar with this? I can't see all of you, but I'm assuming there's some head nods when we think about stress. So we tend to think of stress as a bad thing. And when we feel stressed, the first thing I want to highlight is that that's okay. Stress is actually really, really normal, and it can actually be helpful, and we'll talk about that. So stress is a normal response, both physiologically and emotionally. And it shows up when there's things that are happening around us that are new. It's a normal response to change. Whenever there's some kind of change happening, our body amps up a little bit. Whenever something is a perceived threat to our sense of familiarity, equilibrium, sense of what we already know, our body goes, hey, what's going on? And we'll feel it internally. We'll feel it with a tightening of the chest. Our breath will get more shallow. Sometimes the mind races and goes really fast. And sometimes the mind might feel like it goes completely blank. We might have a completely numbing experience to it, or we might feel really charged. Now, these perceived threats that activate stress, they can be real, they can be imagined. So one of the most common examples of this is if there's a coiled up rope in the corner, the mind might glance at it and see a snake because it looks familiar. The body will respond in a stress response and will look over and say, oh, it's just a rope, I'm safe. The body will go into a state of calm again. So the threat doesn't even have to be real, but it can be one that's just sensed or seen. When we're feeling these stresses, they're in response to things that are very real, even if it's not happening. Like sometimes we can have the space of imagining the worst case scenario. The mind is really good at this. We have a really creative mind. We're good at visualizing and imagining, and we can create the worst case scenario in our mind, and our body will respond as though that scenario is what's actually happening right now. So the stress kicks in even to things that, like, what if I lose this job? What if I get in this argument? What if? And all these what ifs, the body will feel that as a threat. It'll feel it as stress. So when we're feeling it, it can point to things that are very real in our life, our work, our relationships, our financial state, our physical health, the things that matter to us. And when the stress is really persistent, it can start to look and feel like anxiety, depression, just that general sense of uneasiness and overwhelm. So One of the things we want to think about is why now does it seem like stress is more and more of a concern? Like, why in the last couple of years is anxiety and depression so significantly higher? Why are we sometimes feeling like, even though in some ways our lives have gotten quieter, the stress is higher? Part of it is because stress activates when we encounter change. Our body, our mind, and our central nervous system. You see on the slide CNS, that's shorthand for central nervous system. Our nervous system loves predictability. When it can predict with some degree of consistency what's going to happen, our routines, our body feels more calm. We have that state of being. But in the last couple of years, our routines have changed. Sometimes drastically, sometimes not so drastically. We have this experience of fewer choices, or sometimes no choices, with the things that have been shifting around in the pandemic. Masks, no masks, here, this is open, this is closed, this is restricted, this is not. Everything is uncertain. Our attention is being pulled in all kinds of directions: pandemic, social justice themes, political drama, all the things. We have this extreme excess of stimulation coming into the mind, and our bodies in some ways are getting less because our routines are different. So we're getting numbed, our perspective is getting very narrowed, and yet we're getting this onslaught of information. If we look at the current landscape around us, there's this term called Vuca that describes it perfectly. So Vuca: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Like, this is the perfect formula for activating stress in the whole body. This is going to do it. It's going to kick in our nervous system into high gear. It's going to go into flight, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is that point where we just kind of acquiesce to whatever's going on. We freeze, we get paralyzed, we don't know what to do, or we want to run, or we want to fight. All these changes that are happening around us are activating our stress response, and we've been hanging out there for a long time now. So if any of you are feeling more stress, even if on some level you might be going, it seems like I shouldn't be, your body's it's working exactly the way it's supposed to. The experience that's happening around the world right now is one that invites stress by design. So we're going to be feeling more of it. And depending on you and your individual physiology, that stress can look more like anxiety, can look more like depression or irritability. We have our own unique ways that stress shows up for us, but none of them are wrong and none of them are bad. When stress kicks in, our body gets flooded with stress chemicals: adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine. These all come up to tell our body that we're in danger. The body and the mind shift energetically. Our muscles get tense, the breath gets shallow. Our body temperature also changes. It can get warmer, it can get cooler. Our attention gets really focused, and we can get really fixated on the what if, or the I don't know how to, or the I'm not sure what's going on. All the questions that start floating through the mind that activate that imagination in the worst case scenario that our mind is so good at, which then feeds that stress. It just keeps coming. Now, here's the thing: when we're feeling stress and these chemicals flood the body, they're there for a reason. So when this happens, it's intended to keep us safe. So if, say, you're driving and a deer jumps out in front of you, you're going to get a rush of adrenaline, cortisol, and norepinephrine. Your attention is going to go very quick to, what do I do to keep safe? It'll slam on the brakes, or you'll steer out of the way. Your breath will shallow because your muscles will tense, and it'll keep you safe, maybe even the deer safe. This is a healthy and appropriate response. Once we get past that and we move, the deer is on his way and you continue to drive, all that chemical that's been flooded in the body gets to start to release. We start to feel the muscles soften again. We start to feel the breath deepen. We'll often sigh, right? We know these experiences. This is the same when, if you're driving is a really easy time when we can feel stress coming in, but it can be in anything. We need a certain degree of stress. The thing is, it's actually meant to be released. This flood of chemicals is meant to transition us through a difficult situation, through something that's startling, through something that's unusual, through a change. It heightens our senses and prepares us to move quickly. And I have this picture of these animals here because animals are great. They really do this stress well. So if they're hanging out doing their thing in their herd and the predator comes, say the cheetah comes, what happens is they will have that same stress response. Their muscles will tense. You'll see the ears go up. Their senses get more tuned into what's happening. They tune into the danger and the threat that's around them. The body floods with stress chemicals. You can see the muscles tighten, and then they run. And they run and they run and they do what they need to do until the threat is gone. What they do next is significant, because what they do next is they pause. Once the threat is gone, they shake and they start at the head and they move through their shoulders and then they kick their feet out and they actually start releasing the tension that's in the muscles and they move those stress chemicals right out of the body. And then they stop and they pause in community in their herd and they drink, they hydrate, they nourish their body, and then they rest. So they allow their body to transition out of that stress response. We have, one, forgotten how to do that a little bit, and two, our threats are not as quick to come and go as the cheetah. They're always there to some extent. So anxiety is helpful. That stress response is helpful because it helps us bring focus. It activates our instincts. It awakens our intuition. It tells us run here or stop here. It heightens our focus. And it helps us move. It activates capability. It lets us know that we can tap into our resilience. The problem is why we're feeling more of it lately is because when it's pervasive, when it's really prolonged, it gets trapped in the body. And this is a normal response to our natural landscape right now. What's happening out in the world and has been happening in the last few years, most intensely in the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, is that we don't really have the benefit of this release. The stress is constant. Every day there's something new on the news. Every day we get the stress, the information about what's not working or what's changing, or this rule is here now and this is there. And the body is having a hard time finding an opportunity to release it. So the threats feel constant. The change is constant and it's intense. When the stress is trapped in the body, it can look emotionally like worry, anxiety, depression, or fatigue. And physically, it's going to look like headaches, digestive distress, muscle aches, and even sleep disturbances, and a whole host of other things. So if any of this is happening for you, you're in good company. You're not alone. Your body is doing what it is supposed to do in response to a very stressful situation. And this is okay. But now here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. There are things that we can do, and that's what we're going to be talking about now. So what can you do to help manage this? First thing we want to do is always notice the body. I'm going to talk more about what that looks like. Think in adjectives. So we want to start, instead of labeling our stress as stress equals bad, or I feel terrible, or I am fill in the blank, we want to shift to descriptive words. What I'm feeling tightness, I'm feeling cold, I'm feeling pressure in my head. We want to start naming and getting more descriptive, getting more aware of the way that our body is communicating stress to us. And from there, we then focus on simplicity, very small things. Sometimes our efforts to relieve our stress, we want to run away from it so much that we do these big broad strokes and think we have to do these big things. Like I have to take 3 weeks off, or I have to change my entire diet and lifestyle. And while yes, taking time off and diet and lifestyle are hugely helpful, You want to start with very small, simple shifts always, because in every moment, just the smallest shift is going to help you move towards equilibrium. It's going to help you bring you back to balance internally, physically, and emotionally. So let's talk about what that looks like. Your body-centered allies, your supports for managing stress. There's 4 big ones. I'm going to talk about each of them and practice a little bit with each of them. So breath is the first, touch is the second, and then movement and meditation. These 4 things, sometimes just one of them or any combination, you can play with all of them, are going to help you find center, find balance, and cultivate that experience of calmness, that state of being. It helps take that intensity of stress and all those stress chemicals that are flooding through the body, and it's going to help release them just little bit by little bit, not drastically, but enough so you start to feel like you can trust and tap into your resilience. That is at the root of calm. So the first one is pause. So I'm going to invite us to do this right here, right now for a moment. So go ahead, and if you can, just roll your shoulders back and close your eyes. And from here, I'm going to invite you to just notice the body. Notice your head. Notice your jaw. If your jaw feels tight, I'm going to invite you to just separate the teeth just a little bit. Notice if you can soften the tongue, letting that drop a little bit in the mouth. Notice what's happening in the shoulders. What's happening in the belly? Is it tight? Is it soft? What are your hands doing? Take a breath in, gently exhale. I invite you to open your eyes and just jot down or make a note of 2 or 3 adjectives, 2 or 3 descriptive words to describe what you noticed. This could be thinking in terms of tension, ease, softness, stiffness, temperature. You might have words like edgy, sharp, soothing, tired, heavy, light. So this idea of just closing the eyes for just a second, this pause, is one of the single most powerful tools you have in your arsenal of body-centered self-care. Because when we pause, the mind's naturally going to start to still. It'll feel really chaotic for a moment, but then it's going to say, okay, if you're giving it something to look at, like, hey, body, what are you telling me? Your body's going to communicate with you. And we're not trying to judge it as good or bad. That's why we think in adjectives, descriptions. What is that feeling? We can connect with our senses. What are we seeing? What are we smelling, hearing, tasting, touching? And even just by doing that, checking in with what am I actually taking in right now? Am I taking in, do I have a TV and a phone and an iPad and a laptop all running at the same time? Okay, maybe that's a lot of input. What can I slow down? What can I minimize? Where can I invite simplicity? So just in that pause, just checking where we are is very, very powerful. From here, we're going to go and check in with our breath. So the breath is one of your super allies. The breath is like a superhero when it comes to our body. The breath is one of the only systems in the body that is completely automatic, that we don't have to do anything with. It's always going to happen on its own, and we can control it 100%. Like, we have both. Like, it's going to do its thing and we can completely work with it. And every time we work with our breath, we change how we feel physically and emotionally, because they're intricately connected. Our body and mind are always talking to each other, and they do it very much through the breath. So the first thing I want to do is notice, are you holding your breath? Is your breath shallow? Is it hanging out at the top of the lungs? Or is it in the belly? There's no right or wrong answer to how you're breathing. It's just noticing, what is the breath doing? And sometimes even just by bringing attention to it, it starts to change. So the first thing we do, we notice if we're feeling a lot of tension or stress, the first thing we can do to start to create a shift is to extend the exhale. You know, people will always tell you like, oh, just breathe, just breathe. That's great, because yes, we want to breathe, but the challenge is usually when we hear the word breathe, we think inhale. So we're like, and we start to gasp. The inhale is always going to happen. What we forget to do is exhale deeply. When we fully exhale and fully release our breath, the next inhale is naturally that much deeper. And it brings that much more oxygen into the lungs, into the bloodstream, into the brain, and the mind can start to settle. So we're going to do that for a second right now. We're just going to pause for a second. Again, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just take a breath in through the nose and then open the mouth and exhale with a really big sigh. We'll do that 2 more times. So just breathe in slowly through the nose. And open the mouth and really sigh it out. Last one. Just notice how your body feels with that little shift. When we extend the exhale, we're actually inviting the body to switch off the sympathetic nervous system, the stress response, and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode of the body. The longer the exhale, the more active the rest system of the body is, because that's more aligned with our natural rest response, this type of breathing that we do when we're sleeping. When we sigh and open the mouth, we release tension in the jaw and the tongue. And when we do that, all of these muscles are connected. The tongue is connected to every muscle in your digestive system. As soon as we soften all of that, we start releasing tension in the internal muscles as well. So huge benefit from just exhaling and really opening the mouth. And we do some of this intuitively. Like when something's over, like the end of a long day, you sit down and you're like, ah, that big sigh. There's a reason for that. When we sigh loudly, it releases tension in the body. Laughter is another great way because it naturally forces air out. So that stale, stagnant air that gets caught in there, it starts to let go. And then the next breaths are naturally, without effort, deeper. And that invites ease into the body. It starts to welcome that state of calm. There's another breath practice that I'm going to share with you that is a really powerful one. It's called alternate nostril breathing. And some of you, if any of you have practiced yoga or gone to yoga classes, you may be familiar with this practice. The Sanskrit term is nadi shodhana, which actually means cleanses the channels. So this is actually what we're doing when we're doing this practice, is we're clearing the system. We're balancing the flow of oxygen to both hemispheres of the brain. We're increasing oxygen levels in the bloodstream. It calms and rejuvenates the nervous system. And it has this beautiful side effect of improving our concentration, which is a nice thing to have happen, especially when we're feeling a lot of stress. Concentration can be really challenging. So with this practice, I'm going to invite you to check this one out. We can do this for just a few rounds. The practice is I'm going to invite you to take your 2 fingers, your index finger and your center finger, into a V shape with the peace symbol, and bring them together and let that rest right between the eyebrows, so that you're going to have your thumb on one side. You're going to use your right hand for this. So your left ring finger is going to be alongside the left nostril, and the thumb is going to be alongside the right nostril. And those 2 fingers are going to act like a little fulcrum. So what we do when we do this breath, we're going to inhale through the right side of the nose and close the left side with that ring finger. Then we're going to pause for a second and switch fingers, plugging the right with the thumb, and then exhaling out the left. We'll inhale left, switch, exhale right. So that's 1 round. So we're going to do 4 rounds. just so you can experience this. I'm going to invite you to just pause for a second and close your eyes if that feels okay. And then making that peace symbol, bringing the hand to the forehead, those two fingers rest just above the point between the eyebrows. Just take a regular breath here in and out through both nostrils. And then gently taking that ring finger of the right hand and pressing, but gently pressing the left nostril closed, inhaling through the right. And close the right nostril with the thumb, open the left nostril, exhale. Inhale left. Gently close the left side of the nose, open the right, exhale right. Inhale right. Switch. Exhale left. Inhale left. Switch. Exhale right. Inhale left. Switch. Exhale left. Inhale left. Switch. Exhale right. Gently releasing the hands, breathing in and out through both nostrils. Exhale, soft and long. One more just like that. Exhale. And gently opening the eyes. Just noticing the effects of that very short practice. So this is a practice that you can do at any time. And if you do this for 2 minutes, and we did that for about one, if you do that for about 2 minutes, you'll notice a really significant shift in your physiology. So this is a way to just bring balance into the nervous system. It's very soothing. It turns off the stress response and it brings more ease into the body. Okay, so our next ally in our body self-care, calm, inviting arsenal is touch. And this is surprisingly powerful, even though it's surprisingly simple. And if you simply even place your hands right on the sternum and just hold here and just gently press here. And if we hold this for even 2 to 3 minutes, you might keep both hands on this heart area or put one around the belly and keep one on the heart. When we hold the body like this and extend our exhale, and we're going to do this in a practice at the end of our session today, the body receives this as an embrace. So when we hold this posture with gentle, deep breath, the body actually gives ourselves a boost of oxytocin in the brain. It's a neurotransmitter that helps us feel safe and connected. It's sometimes called the love hormone. It helps us bond. It helps us feel okay. And when we're able to offer ourselves this comfort on this level, just very subtle, it can be really powerful and really soothing to the whole nervous system. So this is a very gentle thing that you can do anywhere, anytime. If you're sitting on the couch, wrap yourself in a blanket and hold your heart and wrap the other hand around the belly and exhale. Just focus on exhales. This will change the stress response in your body. Very simple practice, really effective, totally accessible. If you're having difficulty sleeping, this can also be really beneficial to just hold yourself in this way before you go to sleep. And if your arm feels like it's too low to do that, you can put a pillow underneath your arm and it holds the arm up really easily when you're lying down. Little bonus tip. So we're talking about touch. There's a couple other things we can be aware of when it comes to stress is this idea of grounding. So feeling your feet on the ground, being aware of your hips on the seat, being present of where your hands are. Very often we're not paying attention to where our body is in space. And sometimes if we even just right there, like, oh, I can feel the earth under my feet, digging your toes into the ground, it brings our energy down. Because often when we're in this state of stress, everything's in the head, everything's moving around in here, the thoughts are swirling. And if we go, wait, can I soften my feet into the ground? Can I soften my hips into the chair? Can I feel something with my hands? It brings our attention down into the body and it helps release some of that stress and tension. The last part of touch that I want to touch on is this idea of self-massage. And self-massage is a really powerful practice and that is incredibly soothing for the nervous system. And you can even just do this with your hands right now. Just hold your hands and just start to press the thumb into the base of the other thumb. And just massage there for a moment. And start to notice how the body responds to that. Like, how is your hand welcoming that? And you can do that with the other side. And if you feel inclined to, which sometimes once we start self-massage, it kind of wants to keep going. You know, you might find yourself wanting to move into your wrist or into the fingers. You might even want to find yourself like checking out your shoulders. Like, oh, there's something there. The more we practice just bringing this soothing touch to ourselves, the more we're able to, one, physically release the tension. Remember, like the animals that shake, like we start to physically move some of that stored tension in the muscles that comes with stress out. That nourishes our tissues. And it also stimulates the flow of lymph nodes, of lymph in the body, which is one of the ways that we detoxify. So it helps us feel present. It helps us bring us right here into this moment. It also is just this, it's comforting. So you can find what feels right. Hands and feet are a great place to start. Face and temples, also really beautiful place to move in. And just bring in a little bit of touch. Doesn't take much. In Ayurveda, there's 108 marma points. And you'll be learning about this when you talk with Maria about acupressure. Different parts of the body will respond differently to different touch. So you can pay attention to, wow, where feels good and what kind of pressure feels good, and let your body guide you. Our next ally is movement. So movement, moving the body, stretching, shaking. I say dance party, which means just put on some music and move in the house. Let yourself dance around. Those kitchen dance parties in my house all the time. These bring up our heart rate. So sometimes if our stress particularly manifests more as sluggishness, depression, or shutting off, now this kind of movement can be really, really helpful. Anything that's going to dance, anything that's going to bring up the heart rate or move that energy that's gotten stuck, that's going to help it move out of the body. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Remember, I said small shifts, little tiny incremental shifts. 2 minutes of movement is going to be more effective for most of us than an hour at the gym, because we don't need to have a gym membership to move the body. When we're talking about managing stress, sometimes it's just as simple as standing up and sitting down, because we sit a lot. And especially in the light of the pandemic, there's been a lot more Zoom. There's been a lot more sitting. So it doesn't take a lot of movement, but just a little bit. So even if you reach your arms up overhead and stretch like this and just move over to one side and then the other, you'll start to notice, oh wow, my body feels different with just that little tiny movement. If you shake the arms and just really shake and shake the hands, you'll notice, oh, my body feels different. It doesn't need to be a lot. When we think about movement, we can go back to that idea of, like we were thinking in adjectives. Let your body guide you. If you're feeling slow and sluggish, you're going to maybe choose a more faster and energizing movement, running, cardio, vinyasa, bike riding. just standing and shaking, doing 2 jumping jacks. It doesn't have to be much. If you're feeling really riled up or really ungrounded or really restless, something slower and grounding might be more helpful for the body to move back towards center, to move towards balance. That could look like Qigong or Tai Chi or very slow walks outside, Yin or restorative yoga, or even doing weights that are just grounded, slow movement. Something that's slower that brings you back into the earth. So these subtle things. Meditation. I'm not going to talk a lot about meditation because there's a lot of information out there. But meditation is really about listening. Meditation is about, it's not about clearing your mind. I want to get that right out of the way. Meditation is not about making the mind clear or empty, but it is about learning to listen to the body. And it comes with practice. It's nourishing and it helps you make friends with your mind. Like when we sit, sometimes we'll have this explosion of thoughts, and that's okay. That's normal. We notice them. The practice of meditation is just notice. Focus the attention on the breath or a thing. Notice that your attention wanders, that you have thoughts. Just acknowledge it and go, oh, thinking again. And gently bring your attention back. Redirect the attention and focus. And you'll do this 10,000 times in a sitting. And that's perfectly normal. That's exactly what the practice is. This moment down here of acknowledging and redirecting, that is the practice of meditation. And as we do that, what starts to happen is the body starts to settle, very much like a snow globe. All the noise and the snow globe, it just starts to settle. And we go, oh yeah, okay, I'm all right. I'm okay. Even when my thoughts are over here, I can still be okay. And start with more than 0 minutes a day. Like you don't have to meditate for an hour a day. If you can, that's amazing. I don't know a lot of people that do that regularly. More than 0 minutes a day is what we want to aim for. 30 seconds, better than none. Track your progress. You can use guided supports. Insight Timer is a wonderful app like for this. It's an amazing app, but there are so many other great ones out there. Headspace, Calm, Sattva, there's a lot of them. Find the one that resonates for you. And over time, see if you can get to 20, 30 minutes a day. And it might take you 5 years to get there. It might take you a week. It doesn't matter. Aim for more than 0 minutes a day. Your body and your physiology and your central nervous system will thank you. When we think about meditation, I personally cannot talk about meditation without talking about Yoga Nidra. And I'm not leading a Yoga Nidra practice today, but I am going to talk about it for a second. This practice is one of the most supportive practices that you can offer your body in terms of stress recovery. And it's a practice of essentially conscious sleep. So it's a guided practice where you lie down, much like this woman is doing, and you close your eyes and you put a blanket on you if you can, and you listen to someone guide you for 20 minutes to an hour through a practice that systematically releases tension in various levels of the body. So it's a very powerful practice that is supportive of sleep. So the term Yoga Nidra means yogic sleep or sleep of the yogis. It's a conscious sleep. So you're awake, but your body's in deep, deep rest. It actually brings the body into a state of consciousness that we reach only in the deepest level of sleep, where the body is doing cellular repair. So it really takes us into this powerful place. And you can find this practice on Insight Timer. There are several of them. And there is a handout that is available on the website with this seminar that has other places where you can find guided practices for Yoga Nidra. So I do really encourage you to check this out. If you're having trouble with sleep, this can be really, really supportive to help your body remember how to find that ease to get back to sleep. So a really powerful practice for that. So one of the other things that is incredibly helpful when we're talking about meditation is this practice of self-compassion. And we're going to do this practice in just a couple of moments here, where we go back to that idea of holding the hand on the heart and the solar plexus. We sigh. And you can sometimes people find it helpful to tap or massage the heart center. But we're going to go through a practice where we hold ourselves in this way and then intentionally move toward ourselves with kindness, with a very intentional understanding of the fact that things are challenging right now. Because things are challenging right now. Things are tricky. Things are unknown. We're in really foreign territory. So when we can greet ourselves with self-compassion, our whole body says, oh, I'm supported right now. It's okay. When we give ourselves permission to feel how we're feeling, we stop fighting it. And when we stop fighting, the muscles can release. We can go back into that state of being, that easeful, calm state. So we're going to do this practice in just a moment. What I want to reiterate before we go there is this idea of playing with opposites. And we talked about working with adjectives, right? Like checking in with the body, noticing what's happening, and identifying like descriptive words. What is it that I'm feeling? Am I warm? Am I cold? Am I tight? Am I heavy? Am I light? What is it that I'm feeling? If we can identify those in very simple terms, we can make very intentional, tiny shifts in the opposite direction that start to move us back to center. And that's really one of the key things. Our body will give us the cue as to what we need. Our body will always tell us. It's always on point. It knows. Our mind can sometimes go to the checklist of healthy things and say, I'm doing all the things, but they're not helping. And sometimes they're not helping because they're not the right thing for us at that time. So, running may be the best thing, but it might not be the best thing if you're feeling really anxious and ungrounded. It might, for some, actually increase that. You might balance that out with doing something like weights or something else. So what this can look like is simple. If you're feeling contraction in the body, think of something that's expanding. So if you feel like your muscles are really tight, stretch, expand, open them. If you're feeling really low energy, move the body, energize. That's where movement comes in. If you're feeling really spacey or lightheaded or restless, that's where something grounding, like meditation or self-touch or massage, can be really helpful. If you're feeling helpless, choose one thing where you feel really effective. Write a thank you note. Do something where you feel skillful. If you're feeling stuck, choose play. Like we can find these little opposite things that help us find balance, but we can't do that if we're only labeling our experiences bad. I feel stress. It's like, okay, but what is that stress looking like in my body today? When we know how the body is communicating our stress, we get to choose how we want to respond. So when we're feeling pain, we want to invite compassion. And all of this trapped stress, this prolonged stress, is a form of pain. Anxiety, depression, heightened irritability, overwhelm, all of this it's pain. It's emotional pain. So for that, the antidote, the first line of defense, the first line of healing is compassion. So with that, we're going to move into a self-compassion practice. We're going to take just a few minutes, and then from there, we're going to go into Q&A. So I'm going to invite you to go ahead and take a seat and get as comfortable as you can. You can have your feet on the ground. You can have them cross-legged. You could even lie down if you would like. I'll invite you to go ahead and place one hand right at the heart center like we did earlier. And take the other hand and wrap that around the abdomen just gently in any way that feels comfortable and welcoming for you. We're going to take a full breath in through the nose. And open the mouth and exhale with a sigh, softening through the forehead, eyes, and the jaw. Taking another breath in through the nose, pause. Open the mouth, sigh it out, exhale, soften through the shoulders, Down the arms, through the abdomen. One last breath like this, breathing in through the nose. Pause. Open the mouth, sigh, letting go. Softening through the hips. Just sinking into the support of the seat beneath you. Feeling fully supported. Allowing the breath to find a natural rhythm. Each breath flowing fluidly one after the other. And gently scanning the body from head to toe and toe to head. Just noticing if there are any other areas of tension or pain or discomfort. Allowing the breath to move there for just a moment and saying, ah, I see you, thank you, body. Then bringing your awareness into the heart. Noticing those feelings of stress or recalling them. And gently directing these words into your own heart. This is a moment of pain. Pain is part of the human experience. I'm not alone. Others feel this too. May I be kind to myself in this moment. Gently exhale. This is a moment of pain. Pain is part of the human experience. Others feel this too. I'm not alone. May I be kind to myself in this moment. This is a moment of pain. And pain is part of the human experience. I am not alone. Others feel this too. May I be kind to myself in this moment. And then gently calling your name to yourself. And following that with, I am here for you. I'm learning to take care of you. I love you. Calling your name to yourself. I'm here for you. I'm learning to take care of you. I love you. Taking a big breath in. Gently exhale. Just sensing and feeling the quality of the breath in the body as it receives the intention of those words. Taking another deep breath in. Open the mouth, exhale, and tuck the chin to the chest ever so slightly. Invite a soft grin to form on your lips. Just one that says, yeah, I got you. I'm here for you. Bringing your hands together in front of the heart and rubbing them together, letting them get nice and warm. And taking your warmed hands over your eyes. They're closed, and gently rubbing the fingertips into the forehead, maybe around the temples, perhaps even into the hairline. You'll notice that you don't really have to have the mind involved here. The hands and the face and the scalp, they have their own dialogue. They know where they want to go. The hands may want to travel farther into the scalp or hang at the temples or move along the jaw. Just allow the hands and the face to engage in this gentle self-touch, self-massage until it feels complete. And when it does, dropping the hands and giving them a shake as though you're flicking water off of them. And then finding stillness. And gently opening the eyes. And noticing how the body feels after this very short self-compassion practice. So this is one that you have a handout that walks you through it. You can also find this on Insight Timer, this app that Kristen mentioned that I have many meditations on here, but I have a longer version of this very practice that we just did. So you can find it just looking at Insight Timer. You can look up my name and there's audio courses and practices and all this good stuff on there. But this self-compassion practice is there and it's free. So you can practice this anytime until you get used to it and used to those phrases and that gesture, and then you can do it on your own. So what I'd like to do now is just invite space for questions and any insights or any sharing that you would like to do. Because our intention is always to be gentle, but also to be curious. So whatever questions are there, I'd be happy to take those now.
So Patty, we have, first of all, that was an amazing presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there are buckets of questions or reasons that people came here. And one of them, several of them had to do with strategies to turn off a busy mind. So you talked a little bit about the fact that, you know, we're so tense, we don't have a chance to let that sigh happen anymore. But then there's others of us that we have, I call it monkey mind, where you're just making lists and you're thinking and your mind is jumping from this, that, and the other thing. And I'm wondering, is there one of these techniques that you can say that might work for a person who is experiencing a mind that just will not shut down?
The first thing I want to say is that person is very human, and that's not unusual. So you're not crazy. Like that's a normal thing. And the way to help with that is it's going to depend a little bit on the circumstances. So it's again listening to the body. What else is happening in the body when the mind is racing? So any of these practices can be effective in that. Sighing is one of the most effective, to just pause and sigh and turn off input for a few moments. When we stop taking in, so by that I mean the cell phones, any screens, if we can even just look off into the distance for a while at some expansive sky, if that's available to you, if not, just look up and exhale with a big sigh. It's going to, for a moment, stop the input. And for a moment, it will feel more intense. And it takes about 3 to 7 minutes. So I want to put that out there. It can take 3 to 7 minutes for that stress response to wind down. So exhaling and just holding can be really powerful in that. So that would be my first suggestion. The other thing is, if you can change environment, and depending on where you are, maybe not so much in the season we're approaching, but feeling barefoot on the ground can be really helpful too. Wonderful practice in the summer, not so much as the winter we're approaching. But again, just feeling your feet on the ground, it can be also very, very helpful just to get back in the body and out of the head, because we spend so much time in our thoughts. When we let our body and bring the attention into the body, the mind will naturally start to slow.
All right. Another, a number of people mentioned the fact that they're in caregiving situations. So you have moms with kids, you have grandmothers with kids. A lot of times kids aren't, they're not content to sit still. They want your attention. They need something. They're involved in something. How can you take a break in the middle of caregiving to just tune into yourself, if that makes sense? So that you can
It
give
makes
your
a
best.
lot of sense.
Yeah.
This is what I love about these practices, is that none of these are inherently time consuming. So it takes a moment of pausing, and it's really just that pause. It's that one moment of pause and exhale. And if you can, in those moments, even making eye contact with the child who is, even throwing a tantrum, and just pausing and letting yourself be present with them for a moment, instead of in the where you're trying to get them to, like trying to get them to bed or trying to get the dinner. Like, okay, can I just pause for a second and be in this second with this person? And that exhale can help shift that. So it's that exhale and that pause, and even it's a 30-second practice, but it takes repetition.
Mhm.
So it's what we tend to think is that we have to have, we have to do this big thing, but it's really just practicing shifting our attention to not trying to rush to the next thing, but to coming back here. And then when you do have a break, like when you go to the bathroom or when you lie down in bed at night, to start practicing that self-compassion, just acknowledging that this is hard, because it is. Like, we just want to name it, because what our mind will tell us is like, it shouldn't be this hard. And we'll argue with it, like, why is this so hard? It shouldn't be this hard. Instead, we just say, this is a moment that's hard. This is a moment of pain. This is a moment that's really challenging. This is part of my human experience. It's not all of it, but it's a very real part of it, and it's very here right now. I'm not alone. Others feel this too. How can I be kind to myself here? And that might just be by saying, yeah, this is hard right now, because it is. Caregiving, whether it's for your kids or for elderly parents or someone else that you love, it is hard. And so we get to acknowledge that. And that in itself lets the nervous system say, oh, I matter. This is real. Okay, yeah. And it softens just in that comfort.
Is it common for during the self-compassion exercise that you did at the end to feel emotional or get a little tearful with that? That was a question that had
Yes,
come in.
extremely.
Right.
It's one of the most common experiences. And the thing about tears, like, we tend to think that, I think tears sometimes are judged negatively. Tears are wonderful. They're one of the ways that the body releases stress. We have very few, like the body releases through sweat, through urine, through tears. It releases things, and our tears are one of the ways that we let go. And sometimes when we've been holding on for so long, to be able to pause and just give ourselves a break and say, oh man, you know what? I'm here for myself. I'm learning to care for myself, and even tell ourselves, I love you. Sometimes we can go ages, we might have gone a lifetime without ever having said that to ourselves. So to pause in that and recognize the impact of that, very often it releases tears of longing, of gratitude, of sadness, of grief, of the whole gamut of human emotions. So yes, which is all the more reason to practice. Because the more we practice, that when there's tears without it, it speaks to the heart's longing for that care from ourselves to ourselves. And the more we do that, the more we can be present for others as caregivers, as people in relationships with people that we love. But we can't do it if we're neglecting our own care.
Two more questions. I know that we're getting to the end. Somebody wanted to know how to turn off the stress that emits from others. And her example was, you're standing in line at the grocery store or somewhere, and you can feel the energy from other people, and it's affecting you.
Yeah.
So how can you turn it off? How can you block it? What can you do in that moment when you're feeling that?
That's a really beautiful question. There's so much intensity out there right now that it's very real. So the first thing I'm going to do is acknowledge that, oh, I'm feeling something that might not be mine. And what I've found helpful, and with people that I've worked with has been helpful, is one, even just holding on your heart and holding there for a moment, even closing your eyes, and even just saying out loud, like with an intention, just in the mind, like what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. And that it's just as simple as that. Like, oh, what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. I hold my own emotions. Like that, you don't have to take that on. And even sometimes doing a visualization of, I had a teacher of mine who, I've had some very wonderful mentors in my life. I've been very gifted with some beautiful teachers, and my advisor in my doctorate program happened to be a Sufi master who happened to spend some time in Calcutta with Mother Teresa way back when. She like shared this visualization of that, of how do you be in a place that's really difficult with a lot of emotional intensity and pain around you. And it was just this visualization of a golden egg around you, where you get to emit whatever you want can leave, but only what you invite in can come in. So that's a practice. And actually on the Insight Timer app, I have a guided practice from one of my live sessions on there that's called Creating Energetic Boundaries. It's a really beautiful practice that talks about that very thing. So I would encourage you to check whoever asked that question, I'd encourage you to check out that meditation, because it's really specific to that exact kind of experience.
Last question is, someone wants to know where the background wall art comes from behind you. And you and I have talked about how pretty it is.
Yeah, this is a tapestry purchased on Amazon.com. I wish I could say it had more, beautiful eclectic origin than that, but it is a simple tapestry, mandala tapestry purchased on Amazon that is hanging on the space behind me.
Mandala, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, so we run out of time. I'm going to thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. A lot of people said that they wanted to get some new techniques to help manage anxiety, and I think you offered any number of them. And as you mentioned, 1%, just doing a little, even one of these could make a big difference.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thanks all for joining us this evening. If you want to follow up with Patty, you can contact her at this email address here. It's in the handouts, and you can always contact me for her information as well. So hope to see many of you next week for our acupressure session on Wednesday. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Thank you, Andy and Kristen. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Be gentle with yourself.
Thank you, Patty.
Bye.